after the promised time for people, but that's okay because mostly people are watching and replay. But let's see, let's make sure that we're gonna go live. Done, redirected to YouTube. Here we go. After the promised time for people, but that's okay. Beautiful. So now I'm going to, yes, now I can see you. Yay! Dr. Sheri is here. All right. So guys, I want to welcome you to my channel, YouTube channel. It's called Zhanna, my name, but there is a playlist of which is called Dream Big with Zhanna. That is the name of the program. So you are watching and listening to Dream Big with Zhanna, inspiring you to reignite, refire, and refuel your life. That's the place where I interview experts in different areas and experts that personally inspire me, and hopefully you will get a ton of inspiration from our conversations. And today is the day, because you can see, if you're watching us on replay or in real time, you can see on the screen my amazing, the one and only guest, and her name is Dr. Sheri. She's known by Dr. Sheri, but she goes by Dr. Sheri. That's her brand name, and it is her name. So it's, yeah, 2 in 1. Dr. Sheri, for those of you who see this amazing human being, an amazing soul for the first time, let me give you a little bit of her official bio. Dr. Sheri is a spiritual psychologist, health educator, cell biologist, and energy healer, and she is passionate about helping women over 40 achieve optimal health, healing, and well-being in body, mind, and soul. Dr. Sheri is deeply aligned and passionate about teaching others the profound and powerful connection between science and spirituality, as it is both empowering and transformational in one's ability to co-create health, well-being, and a transcendent life journey filled with healing, joy, and bliss. Despite life challenges and adversity, she helps her clients restore balance and healing within by empowering them to align with their subtle energies to prevent and reverse dis-ease within. Her own life experiences and health issues inspired her down a path to encourage women to acknowledge their personal power to heal, to transcend, and to become. She's particularly passionate about helping women nurture their feminine energy, release energetic blocks and trauma, reconnect with themselves, and manage their stress to create resiliency from stress-related illnesses, particularly autoimmune deficiencies. This is amazing. It's just a little snippet of what Dr. Sheri is capable of doing and the work she does in the world. And also, I want to add my personal flavor. When we met at a virtual event, I was just blown away by the generosity and the energy that the energy you radiate is amazing. Everybody wants to, the right people want to stay inside this bubble of energy, and it's so lively and vibrant, but also you're so generous with your knowledge, because the experience that you've been through is just it's worth exploring. So Dr. Sheri, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Sorry for the long-winded bio. It's hard to encapsulate all of that stuff in one little description.
Every little detail in this bio makes sense for the right people, and I'm actually glad. Usually I would prefer, I would give a shorter version, but here every word made sense, especially for women who are listening or will be listening in replay. So let's just dive into what's your big dream. That's the question that I ask every guest. What is your personal big dream?
Woo! Wow. How can we start off with such a giant question? My big dream is to really, really be very present while I'm here on the planet to help women, particularly, just sort of, you know, get into that space where they recognize their own brilliance and really, really acknowledge just how beautiful and blissful and joyful the world is, despite all the stuff that's going on, despite, you know, being kind of contained as spiritual beings in our physical form. And, you know, just really putting my passion for that out into the world and affecting as many people as I possibly can. And then, of course, I would really also like to have a giant farm with as many dogs as possible.
Why also? So definitely you like animals, and dog
Yeah.
is your favorite animal. Do you
Maybe.
have do you have dogs right now?
I do. I have a beautiful German Shepherd named Quinny and a little corgi puppy named Oliver and 2 cats. So I'm just an animal girl all the way around. Yeah.
I see. Do you feel connection with animals?
I do very much. Yeah.
Do you understand them?
I do. Because I think it's all of that same energy, right? You know, I think cats have something to teach us, you know, in terms of, it's so funny that we're going in this direction.
Yes, I was also like, why did we go there?
Yeah.
But I know why. I'll tell you why.
You know, I mean, cats have something to teach us that is very different than what dogs have to teach us, that wolves have to teach us, that horses, that fox, like, you know, it's all different, right? And I mean, to me, it's sort of acknowledging the subtleties of everyone's energy, whether they're human or whether they're furry, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or even aquatic, you know, but I definitely am drawn toward furry land animals.
Yeah, yes. And the reason I asked that question is because I was so, I get attached to animals. I love them so much. That's why I was so against having a dog in the house until COVID hit. And my daughter made a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation saying at the beginning of COVID, saying, Mom, I need your 10 minutes of your undivided attention. She does the fully blown presentation. The last slide on the show is Q&A. She blows me away with that. We get a dog, right? And now my kids, I have 2, they're like, Mom, stop treating the dog like a human being. And to me, exactly what you were saying, it's the same energy. I feel them, and I don't treat like they're not less than, they're like maybe even bigger. I mean, I treat the dog as is an equal. Right. And you are all about energy. So I want to get into this into this question about spiritual, because you combine in spirituality and science. So where is, from all your beautiful background and the studying and education that you have, so how do you merge the two? What's the leading edge and in your life, and how does that show up in your life? Spirituality.
Well, you know, I mean, honestly, Zhanna, I think it's the story of my life. It goes back to, and I'm glad that you asked me the animal question, because it really goes back to, gosh, I think I probably was, 5 or 6 or 7, right? And we know, for those of us that, kind of dance around in that esoteric space, we know that children are, before their subconscious are programmed by adults around them, they're very connected to spirit, right? When you hang around with a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, 5, 6, 7-year-old, they're in that space. And we know that because their brain waves are in a much different place at that age developmentally, right? So they're much more open to being connected to the other side. And then, their brains are a little bit more open to, for lack of a better way to say this, the programming that awaits them, right? And from, the grownups around them. And so I definitely remember as a small child thinking about things like, do my stuffed animals, are they conscious? Are they aware? Right? are the trees outside aware of what's going on? And so, that dreamy, childlike space of wonderment, of really wondering about the magic and the design, right? That sacred design that exists, kind of is just all over the place. And so for me, that awareness came at an early age, and definitely as I got older and even into my teenage years, and this might sound a little woo-woo for your audience, but I could definitely feel when people in my life, and I guess I could take it back a little bit of a step. My oldest brother, who I just adored, he was married kind of early on, but it was like typical in the 70s. His wife passed away at an early age. I think she was 24. And shortly thereafter, about 3 years past that, my second oldest brother, his wife passed away at the age of 22.
Wow.
And so when I was a small child, my brothers are older than I am, but when I was a small child and a teenager, I definitely experienced having two significant young women in my life both die at an early age, both of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at that time thinking, there has to be something more going on in all of this. It cannot be that we're just here for 2 decades and we leave and that's it. So I watched my brothers and their experience and felt connected, but sort of unaware, right? I was probably 14 or 15 or 16, but I felt myself leave my body at night and go to this other side, this other space, just past the veil of our physical reality. And I was told later on that I was helping souls cross over. Really? So energetically, that was kind of an awakening for me at a pretty young age. And so I don't really separate science and spirituality, because I think that science is sort of the explanation for what is really happening with this kind of phenomenon. And we see it in nature all the time, right? There are patterns, there's sacred geometry, there are patterns in numerically in mathematics and how to explain phenomenon in nature. And so to me, it's really all connected. And then we can break it down, and we can, converse about this at great length, but go kind of dovetailing on the title of what you decided to call this program.
Yeah, it's and by the way, it's called, it's called How to Co-Create. Oh, you mean the program itself?
Yeah, how to co-create your health at a quantum level.
Yes.
And so really, and so there are different ways to perceive what I'm talking about, right? And so we can perceive it at our physical level, our physical body and anatomy and physiology. And then we can begin to break it down to the cellular level, and then what's going on inside of the cell. And then what are the atoms that are making up what's in the cell? And what are those particles that are making up those atoms? And so I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then eventually we can break things down into the quantum level. So the quantum level is just a subparticle level where the magic is really happening all the time. And we as human beings are co-creating and manifesting our reality, our health, our well-being, our prosperity, everything that we would like to see, or even unaware. We're doing it all the time anyhow. And so the idea is to incorporate that knowledge as much as we can to create the life, our health, our well-being, and everything that we'd like to experience with, a better sense of refinement for that process. instead of just sort of willy-nilly floating around.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to get into your story, if you don't mind sharing your journey and what you personally experienced, because you've had a roller coaster of events, so that people are not thinking, oh, like it's easy for you to say, Dr. Sheri, but what do you know about the real? So could you please get into your story so that people understand how it played a role in your life, like this whole co-creation and co-creation of your well-being on the quantum field? I want people to know your story.
It's so incredible. And I'll try to, and Zhanna, we talked about this right before we came live, right? And so I'm a Gemini. And for anyone who may not, and okay, and I'll take a step back too, because astrology is based in science, which is based in how the planets are moving and the energetic attraction that we have toward planets, toward the moon, toward the sun, and all of these celestial beings, that is very real, right? And so I use astrology in my everyday life, not to say things like, oh, Gemini, if you smile more today, then this will happen, but just more, where was the sun when you were born? What time of day were you born? Where were the planets? Where were the moons? Where were these major asteroids, right? And if you think about going back to Isaac Newton, talking about, the effect and phenomenon of something like gravity, right? When two bodies that have a mass, they're attracted to one another. And so astrology, to me, runs in that same vein, right? The planets affect us, the moon affects us, the tides affect us, right? We are, as human beings, even though we seem so ridiculously physical, we're energetic beings. And on a quantum level, it's kind of all the same energy. We're a part of this, infinite quantum blanket. Of course we're affected. Of course we are. And so being the Gemini that I am, with Sun in Gemini, my rising sign in Gemini, and Mercury and Venus and Mars, we're all in Gemini. The moment my body decided to incarnate onto this planet. And, being a Gemini, and this is true for every astrological sign, we all have our strengths and we have things that we should pay further attention to that can really help us in that process of co-creating, right? So, and we all do things and are motivated for very different reasons. And so, I know that I'm kind of like getting a little bit off track. So we can talk about astrology in a totally different way. But to answer your question about this story of mine, I think characteristically Geminis are capable of doing a couple of things either well, or maybe, I don't know, we just sort of end up in places. But Geminis are interminably curious about everything in life. And so for me, with that science and that spirituality, it meant something to me to continue to investigate these phenomenon, this connection of science and spirituality, and really bringing it together in a meaningful way to have faith, to trust, to believe in this unfolding, that we're not alone, that the universe has our back, that even in times of trauma and times of strife and really yucky situations, we're still buoyed by something much more brilliant and loving and amazing than we can even imagine. And so the other aspect of Gemini is that we have a tendency to kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, fly by the seat of our pants, right? And so if it's shiny and lovely and awe-inspiring, right, a Gemini is going to go after it, right? And I definitely have had people who have known me in my life call me a magpie, which I think magpies, right, are birds that like to go near shiny things.
Yeah.
So I like the shiny objects. And so, I've made choices in my life that where I really do believe I have a tendency to be a risk taker, where I have a tendency to go full out in whatever I'm doing, which has led me down a path of things being very magical and very brilliant, and also really heartbreaking and really heart-wrenching. And so, and part of that for me has been this interesting relationship with my physical body. And for anyone listening who has had challenges in their physical body, they definitely know where I'm coming from. Because there's something about being in physical form purely from a scientific, spiritual place, right? We know our soul, our spirit is just really vibrating at a very high frequency. But now, like when we get onto the planet, we're taking that frequency down a notch just by getting in a physical body. And it doesn't always feel good, because it's much easier to feel free and float around. But here we are kind of like, in this space that we have to contend with in physical form. And so I think, going back to the whole idea of being Gemini, where it's so important for me to feel free and to fly around, now I'm in physical form and I'm not really always a happy camper with that. And so in my late 20s, I was at a concert and my appendix ruptured. And I went to urgent care. No one diagnosed me. About 4 days later, I finally crawled into an emergency room and I was septic, and they were very sure that I was not going to live. And at that moment, I thought, I think I don't really need my physical body. And I could feel myself leaving. I could feel myself pulling away. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This comfort I have of leaving my physical form. I was really, really ready to go.
So you were consciously thinking those thoughts?
Yeah, I was on the verge, kind of floating in between consciousness and not, and really feeling like I'm ready to go. And it felt okay. It felt okay.
So
and I had a couple of,
Can I just ask you one more question? So the actual you, not your physical body, the actual you who was doing the thinking in that moment, was okay.
Okay, I was okay.
But but your body was not, right?
My body was not.
You could separate the two.
Completely. And so, I thought my time had come at the ripe old age of 27, and I was feeling okay with that. And they did a very lengthy surgery and took all of my organs out and washed them off with antibiotics and popped them back in. And I remember when I woke up, I thought, oh, I'm still here. And it was
sort of like a disappointment.
Yeah, it was such a strange feeling. And my first thought was, I am not my body. I'm my soul, I'm my mind, I'm my intellect. I don't even need my body. And at the ripe old age of 27, I made a very powerful declarative statement that my body sort of kind of didn't matter all that much.
Wow.
And that's when I went on this whole journey of working on my master's degree and my PhD. And the
PhD was in which field? So that
in psychology. And I was sure that my physical body was just sort of a little bit of an afterthought, and I didn't feel like I needed her, that I needed to connect with her. And so I went back to school to nurture and develop my intellect. I went and joined a church that revolved around religious science, which is really where I began that process of beginning to understand co-creating within and using the quantum field. And so, Zhanna, it's an interesting story. And I mean, we could keep going on because my whole life has
Yeah.
been a roller coaster of um, really
Yeah.
learning to navigate and love my physical body and nurture it and really honor that trinity,
Mhm.
really deeply honor the trinity of body and mind and soul.
So I want to close that gap because now so we finished with you thinking that this was kind of not important, the body was not important, right? And you decided to
Right.
feed your intellect. But how did you come, because you turned it around and now you're teaching people how to actually do this trinity thing, right? Co-create. So for it's for the body, mind, and soul, or soul, but which, because you switched even the sequence in which you do that, right? Meaning
Well, right.
some,
And it's such a great question because we're all unique, right? And so, you know, the typical phraseology would be body, mind, soul.
Mhm.
So if you think about, right, we have our physical body, and from an energetic standpoint, it's still energy, right? We're still very deeply connected to the energy of each of our cells in our body and the DNA that is in each of our cells in our body. Well, most of them. Because some cells don't have, yeah, anyway. So we have our physical body in this energetic form. And then right outside of that, we have other layers of energy that surround us, right? We have our emotional body, then we have our mental body, and then we have our spiritual body, right? So there are definitely different layers of human energy fields around us. And so everyone is different. There are people that take a deep dive into their physical body and don't really nurture the mental, the emotional or the spiritual aspect. So I kind of use those words interchangeably. For example, my Facebook group and the name of my company are Mind, Soul, Body, Balance. Because in my mind, the way that I sort of interpret it from my own point of view is that if you have thoughts that are energetically not aligned, if you have beliefs that are energetically not aligned, if spiritually you are not aligned, it's going to affect your physical body. And then conversely, the same is true. You know, I mean, if you take really great care of your physical body, but all of your other energetic aspects are out of alignment, you might be okay in your physical body, but probably down the road there will likely be an energetic imbalance.
So I want to, and I know you, but I don't know if you want to mention that this was the first. I don't know if it was the first experience that you described for us, but then you had many more setbacks. Like you lost your husband, right? You struggled. You had several near-death experiences from, right? So
Yeah.
Dr. Sheri has gone through a lot, but what keeps you so vibrant is that knowing that it is all energy, and yet you're helping people, and especially women over 40s, to take care of their body. So body is important because we are in human form. How, anything that you can share about maybe it's the steps, maybe what's the first thing if somebody who is listening to us with autoimmune deficiency, for example, what would be the first step to for healing, to healing? Because
I love that.
you said that you are in recovery, right? Could you share that story, like what is happening to you and why you are so passionate about helping other women with autoimmune deficiencies and beyond, of course?
Well, you know, it's such a great question. So sorry, my answers are so long-winded. I'm just like in a
This is
space right
beautiful.
now.
You have, I was going to tell you, you have, just like you described yourself, this Gemini energy. You are full on, like fully on, and you have this incredible presence to the moment.
Aww.
So I love it. I love it. So
I
let's
feel the
get,
same way about you.
thank you.
I do.
Thank you so much.
Well, you know, here is oh gosh, I want to say this in a totally different way rather than being entirely linear. You know, if we all take a look at who we are in those quiet moments of really self-introspection, of deeper self-examination, and we all know, something really amazing happens to women once they get in their 40s, right? We sort of live through our 20s and 30s, and we're kind of like dynamite and woohoo, and like creating all this great stuff and having all these visions and dreams and creating and becoming. But then we kind of like intuitively begin to slow down and put the brakes on because we really want to know ourselves at a deeper level.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so, you know, I could meet a 40-year-old woman or a 38-year-old woman where she could say to me, I just want to lose 15 pounds to fit in this dress for this wedding.
Mhm.
Right. And a 45 or a 50-year-old woman might say that, but she probably is asking herself, what can I do with my relationship with food where I'm bringing my body back into balance? And I'm no longer motivated by what other people think of me and how I look and, you know, all of those external things now when we get older become much more meaningful and much less superficial. And there's nothing wrong with looking fabulous, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying that. I'm just saying the motivation becomes a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to answer your question in a different way, right? This is really about transformation. This is really about creating a mindset of who you, not you, any one of us would like to become. And
Mhm.
when we take a look in those moments when we're alone, what are the themes of our lives? What are the stories? What are the paths? What are the lessons? What are the journeys? And most of us likely have a theme. And my theme, I believe, being a Gemini, is to run head on into a brick wall, bump my head a few times, fall over, and say, okay, now where do I go? How do I pick up the pieces? How do I learn? And then really remember that this is a journey in faith. This is a walk in
Mhm.
trust.
Mhm.
And, you know, and so my autoimmune deficiency, I had symptoms over the years that probably started in my early 20s. But then they would come in like every 2 years, every 5 years, every 10 years.
Mhm.
And a symptom would come and go rather quickly. And I thought, well, whatever, it's something funky with my body. I'm not even going to pay attention to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And oddly enough, I was in a head-on car collision in 2015, and I broke some ribs and I had a frozen shoulder and busted up my ankle. Like, so not great injuries, but nothing, you know, nothing super life altering. But I
Mhm.
noticed I was having like weird numbness and weakness in my legs. And I went to get an MRI. And sure enough, in August of 2016, I was officially diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Oh.
And so the thing about getting that kind of a diagnosis is that you really have to begin to separate what Western medicine tells you about this particular dis-ease and what's really going on in the body. And so to answer your question about this particular path and passion and journey is that, oh my gosh, it's threefold off the top of my head. One of them is, why do women get diagnosed so much more frequently than men? Why are women much more affected? How did I contribute to any of this with not managing the stress in my life, which is a critical component to autoimmune deficiencies? And then how do I take the psychological and spiritual aspect to pick myself up from running into what I thought at the time was the biggest brick wall, that I had faced.
Mhm.
And, you know, brick walls come, they do.
They do.
But the thing about brick walls is that there's always a silver lining. There's always a silver lining. And so I would never say, in all honesty, that I was not devastated, because I really, 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 without sounding attached, appreciate and like my brain. And now I have a neurologic disorder, dis-ease, that is completely affecting my brain. And so, to answer your question in a much more succinct way, for women and men that are out there watching and listening, the part of getting diagnosed with a dis-ease that affects your ability to function the way that you used to pre-diagnosis, is that you really have to go through that psychological process of mourning the same way that you would mourn someone leaving the planet, because you're saying in some ways goodbye to who you used to be. So there's an entire psychological and spiritual process in going through, you know, who is this, what is this body of mine? Who is this body that is mine? How come it's not working the way that it used to? What happened? So for me, that first step is kind of acknowledging and embracing and really, and I'm not saying that this is easy, but really, really embracing the idea that the universe, that God, that spirit gives you everything for you to become who you're meant to become. Right?
And
So
this
trauma,
is a part of the journey, right?
trauma is part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Sadness is part of the journey. Feeling devastated is part of the journey.
Yeah.
And then where do we go from there? That's the big burning question.
Right. I remember, you know, of course, you know, Ram Dass, right?
Yeah.
Ram Dass from 70s. Was he a professor at Harvard? Harvard professor in 70s? 70s, I think.
Yeah.
So when he got a stroke, and it's from his interview, he said, "I was stroked by God." It's speaking about like this is a part of the journey, and how do you go from here to where you want to go?
Right.
I totally, I agree with you. It's not easy, just like you said, it's not easy, but you, we usually not given, we given just enough, not more than we cannot carry, right? So, and that's always good to remember. You know, listening to you, I have another question. Do you ever feel alone? Because I don't think you ever feel alone. Which
I
is
don't think
which
I
is
ever
an
feel
amazing
alone.
thing. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
don't think I ever feel alone.
because we are talking about the energy, and do you feel the presence? Like even if it's not a human, another human being around, and not even a dog, right? We always have that other aspect of us, right? And the presence of the, how real is it for you in your life?
Before I answer you, I definitely, and we can go back to this, going back to that idea, that big burning question of, if someone comes to me with an autoimmune deficiency, what's the first thing you do? I would say that that's the first thing. And then to continue to answer that question, part of it, you know, would be addressing energy, trauma, blockages in body, mind, soul, an emotional aspect. So I just have to put that out there, because I felt like my answer was not complete.
Oh, we would, don't worry.
Yeah, we can bounce back.
We would have circled back to it.
Okay, good.
This question is recognize and moan, like you would, meaning, you know, like appreciate your body and treat it as death of something, right? Just like another person, but it's your own body. But then what's next? How do we go from here?
Yeah.
And the second one, and the second step would be either to get help, and ask, like, go to you, for example, right? Because you're working with people, with clients, exactly, you're treating them exactly for these issues and beyond, right? And I love it how you're saying that everything is energy, and you are working, because there are so many different ways to look at this issue. I don't like the word problem or project, right? So let's turn project problems into projects. So let's say the project is your body. What do you do with that, right? You go to Dr.Sheri, or if you want to explore it yourself, you can do journaling and find out, like, this first step, right? The first step in how to deal with your feelings around it, it's how to release it. One of them would be journaling. If you're an artist, you can paint. If you are a singer-songwriter, you can create a song, right? Something like that. And then the second step is, like you said, is to start really looking for ways for ways that resonate with you. Not, there are so many different ways out there, right? But then there are specialists who understand and who've lived. Why I love your work, Dr.Sheri, why it resonates with me so much, is because you're not just talking about it theoretically. And I'll tell you why. I was at a conference many years ago, and I was listening, and that was related to a completely different subject. I'm fascinated. One of my passions is working with little children, and this woman who was giving a lecture on how to create the real connection or something like that with the newborns, and she showed us slides and different, like, tons of books that she read, and I was so fascinated by the information. And then, of course, naturally, after the lecture, I come up to her and I say, how many kids do you have? And she says, oh no, I don't have children. So for me, it's like, okay, now this is the theory. It's all theory. It's very different from you're not walking the walk, you're not talking the talk. So for me, why it's all, everything you say is because you've lived that and you still live in it, and that's why I appreciate you. So going back to you.
Well, and I think when I look at my life and the story of my life, it really is, having a mindset of transformation. I think that we're transforming ourselves all the time. And when we resist that, things can sort of evolve in a way that maybe will knock us out of alignment, right? And I keep bringing up this idea of alignment. Alignment really is being very honest and very clear about getting that authentic part of who you are out into the world and feeling really comfortable with it. And alignment can be, and I want to get back to what you were saying about feeling alone, but alignment can be, and this goes right into, talking specifically about autoimmune deficiencies, and for anyone that would like to be healthy and feel fabulous, alignment can be energetically the choices we make with what we eat, the choices we make with what we think, with what we believe, and how we want to express ourselves. And so, I can talk about this idea of why I don't feel alone, but before I do, there are, going back to talking about autoimmunity in women particularly, women handle stress much differently than men do. And chronic stress is directly correlated with gut health, and gut health is correlated with autoimmunity. And I mean, every autoimmune deficiency is definitely different. There are over 100 of them, labeled as of right now. And I would never suggest for anyone that would like to stay in Western medicine to find a treatment or something that they can do to alleviate symptoms. My passion is more about the why. My passion is more about, why is this happening? Who are you meant to become? What do you believe that is not resonating with your body, that's creating energy blocks that are not helping you thrive and really be truly aligned. And so part of it on the physical level is gut health. Part of it is diet, right? Part of it is the thoughts that you think. And this is definitely aligned with the whole field of epigenetics and what our cells are doing, what our DNA is doing, whether our DNA is turning on or off, and the signals that DNA is giving to the rest of our cells and our body. We are so deeply energetically connected to every one of the cells in our body. And as I mentioned when we first started talking, if you think about it from big to little, right? So we have our physical body, we have our organs and our tissues and all of that structure. But at the end of the day, we have cells that make up all of that. And what we think affects how our DNA and our cells are working. And so how I perceive my role to be is to help women particularly, and men too, but help women particularly begin to take a much deeper look at their lives in terms of the energy that they put in their bodies, whether it's food, whether it's thoughts, whether it's emotions, and whether it's beliefs, right? It's all energy. At some point, it's all energy. And when you break that down, that's when you get on that tiny quantum level of beingness.
That all makes sense.
Right. And and then don't forget too, right? Like when I went back, when I was talking about, we as women, when we're in our 20s and 30s, it's kind of like, woohoo, the world is our oyster. How hard are we going to work? What bad food are we going to eat because it's 2 a.m. and, we've been out, hanging out too late with our friends and now it's time to go to a diner. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but we can definitely do things to our bodies in our 20s and 30s that eventually it no longer really works. And part of that is that stress, that aspect of inviting and creating way, way, way too much stress. And when we women end up, in our 40s and our 50s and beyond, we start questioning that and we start shifting and we start looking for a different approach to live. And it most often resonates with finding our authentic selves. It most often resonates with getting more in touch with our intuition, nurturing that feminine aspect, because all of the movement and the goal setting and the doing and the action in our 20s and 30s is a very masculine trait. Right. And so the idea as we get older is to bring in more of that feminine energy.
And how would you define the feminine energy? So the doing and everything that you listed, it's the masculine energy. And for the feminine, what would you say?
All of those things that women think, I can't do that, I don't have time. Like sitting quietly, doing nothing, meditating, painting a picture, writing a poem, walking in nature. So all of the things that kind of bring us back down. And I still promise to get to answer your question about
don't worry. This is all good. That's gold. So why is it painting? Why is it? So you're talking about creativity and seemingly not connected to the goals that we still have, especially for very driven people. So why is it so important if you want to nurture your feminine essence? Why? What does it do for you? Like if you sit and do nothing.
Imagine that. I'll tell you what it does. So here's the thing. I just want to go back to think of everything. Think of this idea of energy as having balance, right? Like it's the nature of the universe, having that yin and that yang, right? Having balance between masculine and feminine energy, because we all, men and women, have that. We all have yin and yang energy within. right? And so we happen to live in a world where getting things done matters. And we all know, and I think you and I talked about this. I remember when I got married, I said to my mom, how come you never told me when you get married that men do one thing and women do 20 things? Like, that would have been good to know. And I love men, and I'm not knocking men at all, not in any way, shape, or form. But men have a beautiful, it's part of that masculine energy trait where men can hone in on one thing and do it, where we women tend to be thinking, I got to feed the cat, pick up the kids, clean the house, make a dentist appointment, go and work out, try to squeeze in a meditation, right? So, and our brains are much different in that sense, right? We have our big corpus callosum communicating with the left and right hand side of our brain. So women tend to be looking at the big picture. And the beautiful part of that masculine and feminine coming together is that men and women can create amazing things together, right? And so, but we women have that, how could I say this in a different way? When we women are running around and thinking and doing and accomplishing and achieving, we're throwing that feminine energy out of balance.
So we need to go back to, that's all about the balance. And I know how important that is, because you know that I write songs, right? Custom songs for people, for brands. And it's seemingly unrelated, again, to, let's say you have a big goal and all of a sudden you decide to do nothing or go to the beach and completely completely shut your brain off from that thing. That's when the solution comes.
Right.
This is so counterintuitive. It's just ridiculous, right? But people are like, what? Doing nothing? Are you kidding me? We have we have plans, we have kids, we have no time, meditation, waste of time, right? So you hear it all the time. So my other question, from listening again to you, before we answer, we'll circle back to, do you ever feel alone? But the question is, because you mentioned it several times, we accumulate so much stress in later years. So what's your idea? What's the antidote for stress, especially for women?
Mine, a committed practice for breathing, for mindfulness, and eventually meditation. And those three things are not the same. But in a physiologic sense, when we engage in a disciplined breathing practice, we're fortifying our vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve, VAGUS, not like Las Vegas, our vagus nerve is one of our 10 cranial nerves coming down from the brain. It's very important because it innervates our parasympathetic nervous system. So our vagus nerve is what brings us back down to calm, right? When we're in a constant state of motion and action and doing, we are giving our body a signal that there's a stress response going on.
Can you give an example? Because breathing, breath work is also, it's a whole different subject.
Its own thing.
Could you maybe share one exercise that people can do, like women can do, like show us how to breathe?
You could do a very simple breathing without too much thought that will recenter you in a moment. Is if you're driving down the road, if you have 5 minutes in between meetings. I have a girlfriend who, I think she really loves me, but she's very aware of my frenetic, excited Gemini energy. And so she'll do breathing exercises while we're talking. And at first I used to feel terrible, like, oh my God, what kind of energy am I swooping into the place? But so the easiest breathing is to just be conscious of your breathing. So just take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and breathe in through your nose. And then out through your mouth. And then repeat that for a minute, for 30 seconds. And if you really want to get fancy, breathe in for 7 seconds, hold that breath for 7 or 8 seconds, and then breathe out. So you're just holding that breath. And basically, and I mean, and I know if you just do it once with me, if everyone does it with me once or twice, you'll feel the difference.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like magic. And so you're giving your body a very important and seemingly subtle cue to just take it down a notch.
Oh.
I mean, even for me, showing everyone, now I'm kind of like, back in Sheri meditative mode, you know?
Yeah. Can I share something? I do public speaking, and every single time before I go on stage and speak, whether that's a huge group or a small group, I go to the bathroom where nobody can, or the green room, wherever, where nobody can see me, and I do literally, but instead of the breathing 3 times, but instead of 7 seconds, so not looking at my watch, I just count in my head on the way in through the nose. It's like 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I hold it for 5, and then I release it for 5, and I do it 3 times repeatedly. Exactly what you said. It's the same.
It's amazing.
It just brings you back in instead of right, and the stress goes, because you know, like public speaking, some people would rather die than speak. Right. Yeah, so it's not the case with me, but still, you know, like you get all those, you know, like energy flowing through you, so you calm yourself down, and then you're back into your body, and
right,
like you center yourself.
Right.
I can't agree with you more. But why did you say breathing and mindfulness, and then the third one was
meditation.
So how is breathing different from mindfulness? Because you said all 3 are different.
Mindfulness is more of a practice having to, depending upon who is teaching you their method, but mindfulness is more of a concerted effort where you might take 20 to 30 minutes to just be in your space. And so some people say, you know, they call it kindergarten mind, where you're not rolling around in your thoughts, problem solving. So a thought might pop into your head, but then you imagine letting it go like bubbles floating away and popping, right? Because we humans are ridiculously attached to our thoughts. And there are theories about that, right? Eckhart Tolle, that's his whole thing, right? His whole thing of the power of now is to, and I mean, and you know, we all do it, and I'm guilty of doing it too. Oh no, I have to have that thought. That's how I function. I'm a thinker. You know, I need to think all the time. I need to think 24/7. And really what that is that it's our ego telling us, oh no, like you need to do this, right? And it's our ego. And so
I have to jump in. How do you define ego?
Well, your ego is that core part of your being that is psychologically protective, right? We need our ego in order to be our own entity, but then the ego can get in the way of a lot of aspects of our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others, right? So it's important to just sort of keep our ego in our space. And I can tell you that I had a moment in time where I thought, I'm going to live without ego. I'm just going to be an open book and not get into power struggles and not, you know, say what I think about things and just sort of calmly be in this space of no ego. And it didn't work.
No.
Right? It can't work, right? Because once you get in that space of sort of downplaying the energy of who you are, then you become invisible. So the ego is like, having a healthy relationship with our ego is important.
Yeah, I think you just fall out of alignment. That you're so big on. Yeah,
Right.
it just fall. You can't. You can't. Even if you understand that you are too much
Right.
for somebody, if you bring it down, you can do it for a little time, right? Little period of time, but then you have to come back to who you really are, because otherwise you're not serving yourself and that's how you get into this dis-ease. The whole thing about. And I love this image about that you gave us right now about those bubbles. Like every thought is like a bubble, and you think your thought, and then you let it go and it pops, and it's very visual. So your thoughts, when we can get not past the intellectual understanding, but really live in it, that our thoughts are not us, it's just our thoughts, and they're literally bubbles. And we have how many? Like 7,000? No, I think more during the day.
I think thoughts during a day, something like 50,000.
Yeah, 50 or something. There's like a huge, ridiculous number, and it's true. And I was trying to do an experiment one day, trying to count them, but most of them are subconscious. So it's just like I lost.
Right.
You can't. We think all these crazy things that are not connected to, and to the moment and whatever you're engaged in.
Right. And the beautiful challenge is really, really developing a sense of self-awareness and deeper introspection. And it kind of goes back to this idea of dis-ease, right? So I shifted my diet, I healed my gut, my brain lesions from MS went into remission. And the reality is that it definitely was a state of being in dis-ease. And so when we are diagnosed or afflicted, not even with a physical diagnosis, but if anything happens in life where we really, really have to look in the mirror, it's really about developing that sense of self-awareness where we can begin to ask very clearly, how does this thought serve my higher purpose? How does this belief align with who I really am? Mm-hmm. Because remember, when we first started talking and I mentioned children being so brilliant in that space of being so close to source or God or the universe or spirit or however we would like to call it, eventually their brain waves are shifting where we humans, where we adults are responsible for teaching children lots of things, because the brain is developing so quickly, it can't all happen in the conscious mind. Lessons have to be learned, programmed in the subconscious, right? Being a human is not easy. And there's so many things to learn. And children are, sponges. They're just waiting for all of that information to come to them. And so, from a woo-woo standpoint, and I use that term very loosely, our subconscious programming and our beliefs and how we see ourselves in the world and the world itself, the majority of that is happening when we're children. Mm-hmm. And here we go. Now we're an adult and we've got all these beliefs and thoughts about everything, who we are, what we believe, our relationship with money, our relationship to a significant other. All of these things come into play based on that programming. And so at some point, when we have that moment of having a red flag or a diagnosis or anything that comes up, it's really an opportunity for the universe to say, hey, take a deeper look, right? And so that's what in part it really is about. And when we begin to take a deeper look, especially for us as women, we really should begin to recognize that we're not just robots trying to keep it all together, that there is a beautiful, intuitive, creative, a magical, etheric aspect to the feminine. And when we don't nurture that, we are, you know, not paying attention to the totality of the magnificence really of who we are.
Absolutely.
So, you know, the diagnosis and the trauma and all that other stuff is just sort of like the universe saying, hey, just pay a little more attention.
I love that. I love that. I want to finish. So these two open loops. So the third one was meditation. The first one was breathing, then mindfulness, and then meditation. So how do you define what is meditation for you? Because it's sort of like, because there are some meditations that are focused, it's the same, it's the breath work, right? You focus on the breathing.
So, you know, breathing is just an easy way to kind of get your vagus nerve calm back down, right? We want to make sure that our parasympathetic nervous system is being acknowledged, so our bodies feel like we're not in that fight or flight stress response. Mindfulness just takes it a little bit deeper, where, you know, it would be important to sit or lie down for 20 to 30 minutes and just be aware of our thoughts and let them go, and just give ourselves a little bit of a break with breathing. Meditation takes it to a deeper level, and there are a lot of different meditations. As a matter of fact, I gave everybody, I think you posted the link to my saltwater bath meditation. And so I take everyone through, and this kind of ties in the feminine aspect, right? Yin, and we're in yin season now in the northern hemisphere with fall. So fall and winter are yin seasons. This is the darkness. This is the water element. This is the introspection. So we have shorter days where we have time to just take it down a notch and get back within ourselves and our intuition, right? And so the saltwater bath meditation is intended to be in water, because water is a great medium for fortifying and being closer to our intuitive selves. And so I take everyone through a chakra meditation in the water with Epsom salt, but you don't have to do that. Obviously, you can do it without being in the tub. But the bathtub really does create a medium to really be closer to that intuitive yin energy.
And so I just want to mention that those of you guys who are watching us on YouTube, it's in the description of the video, underneath the video. And you can also, if you're on Facebook, it's on Hummingbird Academy today. There is a link to Dr. Sheri's meditation that she's describing. Yeah. And you can also join her group, right? Mind, Soul, Body Balance for Women. That's a Facebook group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyone can reach out to me too on Facebook, Sheri Elle Brown. I think it's Dr. Sheri Elle Brown.
Dr. Sheri, yes. Dr. Sherie, and then Brown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have an L. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the links are there, but I interrupted you. So you were saying that you don't necessarily have to be in the tub, but it's better if you are.
I think it just, the medium of water is a really great element for that feminine aspect. And so meditation can have a lot of different intentions, right? You can do, for example, a body scan meditation, just so you're really connecting with all aspects of your body. You can do a meditation to get into your cells, to align your chakras, to focus on a particular chakra, right? And we didn't really talk about that, but all of the chakras, all of the energy centers in our body have very distinct aspects. And I work with women a lot in that way. You know, if their grounding or their trust is rattled, right, then it's a root chakra issue. If they're not expressing themselves, then that would be throat chakra. And I mean, I'm kind of making it very superficial, but chakras are another energetic aspect to take a look at when, you know, you're trying to figure out how to become more aligned.
Yeah, right. Because they're energy points in the body. And it's like centuries ago that I don't even know where it started. In India, I think.
India.
Right? Yeah, India.
Yeah.
So let's circle back. So to the question, do you ever feel alone? So that we can, I know it's going to be helpful. Your answer is going to be helpful to everyone.
I don't feel alone. Because I think that I'm really connected to my intuition, and my intuition tells me we're not alone. We're never alone. And, we started this whole conversation, and I agree with you, Zhanna, in the sense that, right? So my clients started calling me Dr. Sheri. It kind of became a brand for me. I'm much more down to earth than that. But I definitely have moments where I think, oh my gosh, my clients are going to think that I just have had this pristine life and did this whole academic thing. And here I am, Dr. Sheri, know it all, have the answers to the universe. And that's not what's going on with me at all. For me, it's been completely experiential. It has been getting my, I don't even know how to say it, running into that brick wall 1,000 times. And I just get back up because I feel like my lessons have helped me really bridge that gap and really having that empathy and that understanding for the human experience and the sadness and, the places that we can end up. And I really know what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, the beautiful aspect of paying closer attention, getting out of your head, getting into your heart, getting into that authentic space, you'll find that you pick up on those intuitive messages. They're all over the place much more clearly. And it's part of my belief system that we're guided by entities and people that have crossed over that are on the other side. We're just not alone. Mm-hmm. And we're definitely not alone in that quantum field, because in that quantum field, we're all connected. Mm. We're all connected all the time. There's no such thing as being alone. We're a part of everything that exists.
Right. And thank you so much for that answer. May I ask you a personal question? Like I mentioned, I just happen to know that your husband crossed over. Do you feel connection with him?
I do.
Do you communicate? Can you, how is it just a feeling? Some people hear voices, some people. So how is it for you personally?
Well, it can be a feeling, but it kind of goes back to that precognitive dream state. Mostly my connection comes in the dream state. So I would say that tends to be sort of my psychic ability, where we'll communicate and have conversations on the other side. I think that I leave. I think it's an astral projection thing for me. And I leave and find him there. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And thank you. And it gives people so much hope, because there's so much loneliness and stress and everything that we talked about in the world. And you just come as a conduit for bridging the gap between science and spirituality. So for those guys those of you who are listening and you're drawn to Dr. Sheri and her personality, please by no means let us know what is your biggest takeaway, or maybe a few from today's conversation. I know we've talked about a lot of things, and I feel Dr. Sheri, really we're gonna have round 2 for sure.
I think we are. Yes.
Yeah, because there's so much. It's like the human nature. There's always more, right? There's always more, and you are just a walking encyclopedia. But not only the in here, you are living that. So I just want to remind people how to connect with you. The easiest way is to find Dr. Sheri on Facebook, Dr. Sheri Brown, or Dr. Sheri Elle, right? Brown.
I think that my Facebook page, my personal profile, I didn't spell out L-E-L-L-E. I just used the
So
letter
it's
L.
Dr. Sheri Brown.
Yeah.
And then you can join the group, Dr. Sheri's group, which is Mind, Soul, Body Balance for Women. Just one word.
Yeah. And
On
if you
Facebook.
comment on any of my posts, I can always find you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So it's easy. It's easy to find Dr. Sheri. We would be absolutely thrilled to hear from you and see how it landed, this conversation. Did you have any revelations? Do you have questions for Dr. Sheri or myself? And yeah, just you've been watching and listening to Dream Big with Zhanna, inspiring you to reignite, refire, and refuel your life. And Dr. Sheri, at the very end, what are your parting words? Any words of wisdom from you to all those women and men listening and watching?
Remember who you are.
Nice. And can I add to that?
Yeah.
And every time I hear that question, I always have Oprah's reminder, and the answer should be, I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. And then everything is possible from that space. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's been really such a joy. I'm so glad we connected.
Thank you. Same here. Same here. Guys, stay inspired, and until